Hey guys, in this video I wanted to show you how I wrote a Wonka-inspired adventure track for you guys. Let's dive in. Okay, here it is. So if you didn't see last week's video on the essential stuff you need to know to write this type of awe-inspiring, wonder-filled adventure stuff a la this Wonka trailer, then go and check it out. And also the backstory is that I did do the full 1 hour, 10-minute tutorial of me writing this and obviously give you some chat about it as well. But the recording failed. So sadly, I'm going to have to do it again, but I'm not going to do it again because I've already written it. I'm going to walk you through the process. So the first thing we need to do is we need to listen to it. And I'll talk you through how I went about doing everything. Little side note. It is really important that you understand those things I talked about in the previous video because that foundational knowledge is totally essential for you to be able to write this stuff. Let's have a listen. I'm going to leave you wanting more. It's only a minute long. I know. This stuff does actually take quite a long time to compose compared to drones. But let's talk about the whole process. The first thing I did, as I'm sure you're aware, was I laid out my instruments that I showed you in the last video, specifically the full orchestra and tuned percussion. There we go. So I used a piano to sketch the ideas, and I laid up all the tuned percussion, the brass, the metals, the percussion. I don't know why the strings are down at the bottom. Tut, tut, tut. Let's put them up there. Actually, below the brass. Come on. There we go. That was the first thing I did, was to lay out the instrumentation, and then I decided on my chords. And the way I did that was I decided to use the melodic minor, which has a natural 6 and a natural 7 in it, which meant that I could use a C minor chord with an F major and a G quite comfortably. And then I thought, okay, well, that's what I want to do. Then I wrote myself a little chord sequence, which was C minor, F, E flat, which is natural minor, G. And then C minor, F, G, and then I've sort of sexified it a little bit to a G7 flat 9, just to give it that extra bit of tension right at the end. Then the process was to sketch out the bass line and the melody. Okay, so if I just mute the melody. Dee-lickety. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, I like to use the piano to sketch out my ideas. I could have used the tuned percussion, it would have been fine, but the idea being here that I visualize what I'm trying to do, which is, this is my harmony that I've written down, my chords. I'm not worrying about the voicings in this instant, and this is my bass. Now, what I decided was I'm not going to stick to root note voicings, which again I talked about in that video. I decided to go, so I've got root note voicing, root note voicing, root note, and then here that's the 5th note of G, and then I've got the 3rd note of C minor, root note, root note, root note. So I chucked in a couple of other voicings because they add that extra bit of tension. let's listen specifically to these ones. So it's not this one. There we go. Using those different voicings means that when we return to our C at the beginning of the chord here, at the beginning of the 8-bar phrase, well actually 16-bar phrase, it feels so much more powerful, and that is exemplified or exaggerated, even more by the fact that I sustained this brute note of the G for 2 whole repetitions for 4 whole bars, giving me that big, powerful, perfect cadence at the end. That was my thinking. And then I thought, okay, well, let's write the melody. And for that, there we go. I just chose a couple of chord tones. I did this all by pencil, digital pencil, just choosing the ones that I felt I wanted. I wasn't worrying about anything. I was just like, let's put it there. I didn't want any big leaps, massive leaps. That's a perfect fourth. That's the biggest leap in the melody, because I wanted it to be catchy and feel like a hook. Now the next stage was adding in this little phrase here. Because that then became a repetitive rhythmic hook or element that I could use throughout the melody. And then these other bits were just kind of additions to. So rather than having just one note lasting the whole chord, I wanted 2 notes here, which this is obviously a suspension. So a sus4 over that G, which is iterated there. And then here is just moving. What note are we there? We're in the F. Adding in that flat 7 on the chord to give it a little bit of tension and want us to drop down. It's a really simple melody, and that's the key with a lot of this Wonka-inspired stuff, is the melody has to be really simple. It can't be complicated or too distracting, because we want it to carry the emotion still, as well as carrying the childlike simplicity and childlike wonder. So that was my sketch. And in true style to myself, I went, let's just write Act 1. And for that, so much of it is in this. Harmonics layered with tremolos in the strings. Those things give you this feeling of waiting, of questions, of I'm just not sure what's happening. I just gave us 20 seconds of that, and that was it. Then it was like, okay, well, let's layer that with a boom, just for the cinematic, like, the oomph of it, just to kind of like make sure everyone was aware that the track had started. And then I just said to myself, well, let's layer the tuned percussion doing rakes. A rake is when you play the notes as if you're raking across the keyboard. Like that. But obviously only the notes of a chord. I forget whether it's called an appoggiatura or an accacciatura. You can let me know in the comments which one it was. And I ended, this is the important part, and this is the distinction between those two words I can't remember. I ended with the last note being on the beat. C minor, that's the first chord. Then the F natural, F major, sorry. And then instead of going to the E flat, I went to the G to be like, ooh, we're going to hang around on this 5th chord, aren't we? Just because I wanted everyone to feel the fall back into the major chord, back into the root chord, this C minor on bar 11. So let's have a listen. The only other thing I did do here was I added some timpani rolls, and then the horns, the low brass, the low strings, they are just fading in on a note. So you can kind of hear the brass doing it here. That's it. I obviously had a tam-tam roll as well. So let's have a listen to this first act. Now you know what I've done. Ooh, childlike wonder. Tick. A little bit of tension. We're not sure what's happening. It is time we went into the world of the cupboard. Okay, now we're into the business. So all I did was this, and you guys must have seen me do this so many times. Name regions by track name. There we go. Not that. You must have seen me do this so many times. I took my piano and I copied and pasted it down to the timpani to play the bass notes that I had already sketched out. Not there. There. In my bass notes here. And I did the same for the low strings and the low brass. Then I took those piano lines down to the legato and just copied and pasted the melody into the legato. I did the same with the horns. Okay, so if we just listen to the strings and the brass, they have only had those elements copied through. Oh, and of course, those chords from the piano too into the string sustains. Brilliant. I mean, they're doing everything that I've just sketched out on the piano. There's nothing more there. So if I just mute the brass, mute the strings, we are then left with... which actually is a really decent act 2 anyway, which gets me thinking... I didn't see this at the time, because actually one of the things I didn't really like about when I was writing it was how my Act 2 felt too much like an Act 1. Act 3, sorry. So if I do that, and then I take this, and this, I copy and paste, I copy and paste. Let's copy and paste everything. I wonder how that's going to sound. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. This is the lovely thing about doing these tutorials is you start doing the tutorial and you're like, I'm just going to focus on this one element that I'm going to teach. And then me, being me, I get distracted and excited. So let's go back into what my writing process was. It was the tune percussion. I gave all of these glocks and the music box the melody. But I gave the Celeste the melody, but also allowed it to do those rakes again. Because that was quite an important aspect of the whole vibe of that section, in my opinion. And then we're left with the short strings. Because so far, I added the Mark tree just for a little bit of shimmer. Nice. I've got the tam-tams and the tam roll, and that's it. I didn't do anything else. Percussions or timpani, just doing the business. So let's go into the string shorts. Now, when it comes to string short writing, in fact, I should copy and paste. So I'm just realizing that now I've added that extra section. I need to amend a couple of things. So this is going to be an E flat. Oh, dude. I should really explain why I'm doing this, because I've copied and pasted it into the second half of the chord sequence, which is a different set of chords. G, B, nope. There we go. Okay, let's get back to business. So the first port of call, if we have listen, I just wanted something to chug along. It's just chugging along the chords. That's all it's doing. And then this low spick, it's just accenting the chords, and that is all. And then this high, short, the staccato patch, it's picking out a single note within that chord. And that's all. Now, that's one thing, because it gives you this kind of like glorious, kind of almost Pride and Prejudice sense of like, yes, things are good in North London. We shall record the orchestra. It's giving you that sense. But we want a sense of like sweeping gestures, and you need that in this stuff. And that's what you do to make it feel like a sweeping gesture. You introduce fast arpeggios that span 2 or 3 octaves, because that way, this kind of like vast movement kind of gives you this sense of something bigger, of more grandeur. And let me just check this before I move on. Great stuff. I've just doubled it up an octave into the second half of Act 2. I'm going to have a listen to this in a second. And then that was the writing process. And then I finished obviously with where I was, what you heard. Let's have a listen to this now. Listen to this now that I've moved it, because actually my issue was that Act 2 went too big too soon. Now let's see what this sounds like now. Mr. Wonka, I've won the golden ticket! Nice. Here comes Act 3. Yes. Okay, there we go. That's kind of how that's going to play out in my mind. I'm going to cut that. Boom, don't need that. Chop. Oh, no, cancel. Don't delete that. Okay, there was a bit of some wonky stuff going on there. I'm not sure what was happening, whether it's the strings or not. Yeah, something weird's happening. I'll have to have a listen. But it sounded really good. I was very pleased with it. It's got all the right elements. Now here I'd probably layer in a long low string or a low bass just to kind of like give it a little bit more like underpinning, which is really important here. And I'd probably bring in some brass chords as well, just to kind of give it that kind of a more fuller sound, because it does sound it does sound a bit sparse, which is okay, but it's not exactly ideal for me. Now, I'm not going to go on to write my third act because, I mean, it's essentially the same type of thing that I've talked to you here. And again, it does take a bit of time. And because I spent this morning recording a tutorial that was deleted, damn it, I'm having to rush through this, unfortunately. So I would probably do something like this. I mean, this is very basic. What was that, 2.5 minutes? I would probably, I mean, if I was to do this at a push, I would get my sketch going and re-sketch it out. I may well stick to root note voicings, and I might change the melody because I want it to feel different. I want it to feel new. And then once I've done that, I would then I copy and paste to fill out the orchestration. And then it's about small details. Small details, for example, being here, where the spiccato strings introduced, these ones. Why don't they come in a little bit earlier, but just like a digga 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 digga, like that. They're at the bottom of their register at the moment. So let's just take 4 of these notes. Maybe 3. Just something like this. Small details, but they make a big difference. If I start it there, let's have a listen. Like this type of stuff, if you work to sketch quickly, then you can spend more time on those little details, which make a big difference to your track overall. And those small little nuances make people go, yeah, this is the business. This person knows trailer music. This person knows adventure music. For instance, as well, I would probably bring in some other cymbals. I forget, these are always late, aren't they? These blooming. There we go. Bring in some tam-tams, just as a like, hey, don't go to sleep. We're still playing here, Same. Other cymbals, let's try the low one. Now I like, it's not quite the right one. I'd probably use a ride for this, but let's give it a try. Just a little cymbal playing a little rhythm. Giving a little bit of shimmer. That's the one I want, B. Just a little bit more shimmer. Yeah, that tiny little cymbal thing makes a big difference, but it really lifts the track up. And you could do the same with this stuff too. You can start to add ornaments into your other tracks, your other instruments. So we're C, aren't we? So you hear that? That little run just brings it to life. It's the little cherry on the icing. And those things are really, really overlooked by myself often as well. Because we're so focused on finishing, getting to the end of 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, that you forget that all of that stuff in the middle needs your attention, your love. So little details, bringing instruments in a little bit earlier, adding in a few flourishes, layering a couple more sounds like these metals. Just because it fills it out. And if we were writing this for a full orchestra to be played live, I would be very aware that there are percussionists who are only hitting the tam-tam every 16 bars. So I'd be like, okay, let's send them over to the cymbals. You know, admittedly, the tuned percussion chaps are having a great time over there, but this poor guy over here, or girl, poor person over here, not playing anything, you know. Let's bring them on the snares. Where are those snares? Where are those snares? That's it. That's what I want. Oh, that's a horrible note in there somewhere. I will get you. Over the years, I've learned a certain set of skills, and I will find you. There we go. Just tiny. Okay, I don't like the snare. I'd probably save the snare for the end. But those tiny things, those tiny little extra elements, really help lift the track. And especially when you can sketch the track out. You've done all the groundwork with the orchestration and the harmony, and thinking of in terms of the bass, the harmony, and the top line. Thinking in that way, you've done all of the groundwork already, and you've sketched out the track. So then just spend that little bit of extra time adding in orchestral details and orchestral flourishes, because that is what will separate the wheat from the chaff, as a farmer might say, or separate the I can't think of a decent analogy. Separate those who find it hard to write adventure music for those who find it easy. It's not so catchy, is it? But you get the point. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.